Hello and welcome back to the Pokemon Trading Card Game special event in Utrecht. My name's Ross Gilbert. I've got rid of Shay, but don't worry, because I brought in the lovely Alex Dow. How you doing, Alex?
Yeah, fantastic. I had a wonderful interview with our round 10 winner, and obviously you had a great game that you get to see. You got to see that Flaffy toolbox, but of course Mew just come up trumps at the end of it, despite a tricky game one that you mentioned as well.
Yeah, it was a really interesting game. It's basically one of those games, if Jimmy's deck works, he wins.
Yeah.
Like every time in that matchup. So it's just a question of, can the Mew basically do hand disruption, path to the peak, cross fingers? And 2 games out of 3, it totally worked.
Yeah, that's how Mew has become this kind of defensive version and just been able to kind of take down a few tournaments or take down some really high placing spots at multiple different events already. But we've got a fantastic round 11 coming up as well, Ross.
Absolutely. We've got Lauren Van Brecht, who is going to be playing Gudra, which we've seen a few times on stream. And we've got Matthias Jakobsen, who's going to be bringing our old friend Reggie. So this one's going to be a very interesting match. Both players have ways to frustrate the other. We're going to be seeing lots of Gudra being a bit big, but then we've got Regis, who can, of course, do a bit of blocking of his own. So there's going to be some interesting back and forth here. And it's a matchup both of these players are probably prepared for. Gudra is a bit more of a fringe deck, but it's arguable over the past couple of weeks. So has been Regis, but they've both kind of always been there.
Yep.
So I don't know how much testing they've done against each other, as in the decks, but I do think these are decks you've had to have in the back of your mind.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've definitely seen a massive bit of a spike with Lost Box Gudra. Gudra just being one of those decks where, you know, it's going to implement his own game plan, just be this big, bulky, dragon-type Pokemon with no weaknesses. But then, of course, Regis is just that big, bulky, single prizes in its own right. So both these players and both these decks would have faced off against one another. I'm sure both players performing at a really high level right now. Both, I think, on like 25 points. So already in good set, we wanted to just get them on because we haven't seen them on stream yet.
No, and there does come a point, if you're really up at the top, you can potentially ID in the last round or two, get yourself into top 8, so get these top players on nice and quickly. And you said about Gudra spiking, one really interesting point, if you look at the top 6 decks, the 6 players with the best record, coming into day 2, 3 of them were this Hisui and Gudra V-Star deck. So its conversion into day 2, at least at the top, was very, very high. There's plenty of Lugia out there, but Lugia was very much kind of, you know, obviously we got Tord as the highest placed Lugia. That shouldn't surprise anybody. But Lugia was often concentrated around the middle of the top cut of this day 2, whereas Gudra was right up at the top. And I do think there is a little bit of players going, you know what? Well, the way the format's gone at the moment, Gudra, and the way people keep telling it to me is, Gudra is great against stuff like Lost Box. And it's kind of 50-50 against Lugia, but if you're a good enough player, having a bunch of really good matchups and a 50-50 against the best deck that you feel confident you can outplay your opponent, that's a good shout.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of decks go into the mindset with Lugia being such a dominant force. If you take 50-50, I'll take that all day long, if I can sort out my other matchups. And that's what Gudra, with that Lost Box engine, also Lost Zone engine, really is able to sort of shine based on that sort of concept. But we do see Regis and sort of at the start of day 2, also within the sort of the top 8. I think it was Ross Warren who was 702 with Regis as well. So again, showcasing just how powerful this deck is. But we are just going to showcase both our players now as we set up for round 1. Round 11, game 1, sorry.
That's a lot of ones, though, to be fair. So that's all right.
But we do have Lawrence on the left and Matthias on the right-hand side for you viewers at home. And for us casters, getting ready for this round 11.
Yeah, it reminds me of the train I took last night, which left at 22 from platform 21. Totally ruined it.
So close. So close.
Never mind. So, Hisui and Gudra up against Regis. I mean, Regis definitely going to want a fast start here, because one of the things Hisui and Gudra does is when it gets going, it blocks you. It sits there reducing 80 damage per turn, and the problem is that the Reggie deck output isn't that high. It's relying on hitting for weakness against a lot of decks. That's one of the things Reggie does so well. But assuming Gudra beat V-Star, being a Dragon Pokemon, there is no weakness to hit. It's one of the things about Dragon Pokemon in the modern era of the Pokemon TCG. no weakness. So that means that it's going to be early KOs, absolutely crucial if you can get them. And like I say, you do have that red Ice that's got that Blizzard Bind attack, 100 damage for free energy. If the defending Pokemon is a Pokemon V, it can't attack during your opponent's next turn. Of course, remembering that a V also includes a V Star and a V Max, and for what it's worth, a V Union.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's, on top of that as well, Matthias, you know, once he's able to hopefully get past those first couple of turns, of that consistency is, you know, is what we've mentioned a number of times, seeing Reggie's on stream and just sort of throughout this format so far. It needs to navigate those tricky first couple of turns to get those Pokemon on the bench, get those energies in the discard. But it's got a really cool attacker as well to start trying to soften up some of those Goodras if possible, with the Regieleki being able to do damage to the active and then 20 snipes to the bench. So he can start taking some prizes on maybe some Cramorants or some Confays, and then just trying to just get into the game that way. Whilst Lorenz, you know, someone who's played an awful lot in previous years, has taken a break, it seems, and now come back. It's great to see him back once again in 2023, looking for that CP and those points for the invite. So, fantastic player. Let's see how he's going to navigate those Lost Box Goodra matchup here.
Yeah, so if we have a look at the prizes here, Lawrence there has a single Mirage Gate, a single Goodra, but there is a free line. Now, we do see some players going for the 2 Hisuian Goodra V, but there are free, so the prizes there. Nothing terribly impactful from Laurence. Having that Temple of Sinnoh can be a pain, but there are free in the deck, so it's not the end of the world. Matthias putting his prizes upside down, and we do have a Regieleki and a Regirock. Interesting, there are only 2 Regirock in the deck. That's not unusual, of course, but that means there's only 1 actually available for Matthias as we go through. Should come out early enough. There are 3 Regieleki in total, but that 1 Regirock in the prizes could be a little bit of a pain, and certainly when Matthias does his first deck search and finds out, that means it's a card you're going to focus on searching because you're probably not going to draw into it.
Yeah, and here we are, just fully set up now for game 1 of this round 11. The fist bump there. Looks like Matthias is going to be kicking things off with the draw just there, straight into a second Regieleki in hand.
Oh, you want different Reggies. That's the whole point for players newer to the Reggie deck. The whole point here, you get all 6 different Reggies out, and then Regigigas has the ability, Ancient Wisdom, that if you've got exactly all 6 Reggies in play, you can get any free energy cards from your discard pile, attach them to one of your Pokemon, and it basically just gets all your energy. So your goal is very simple in the early turns. Get all 6 Reggies out, bump a bunch of energy into the discard pile, and then you kind of can choose your attacker based on the matchup. It makes it a very interesting deck because it can really change its game plan depending on what you're playing against.
Yeah, definitely, and it's a sort of fantastic start from Matthias here. You've got to capture energy on the active Regidrago with that fantastic Dragon's Horde ability as well, to just give that extra little bit of consistency once he's able to put his hand down to below 4 cards. And it's technically possible still with that choice spell if he wants to commit it now. And then just continue drawing extra cards. Does also have the research in hand for next turn as well. Did put the path to the peak down, which I think is actually quite important because it's just limiting things like that Luminion V or the Radiant Greninja, being able to use concealed cards. So just extra little things to try and slow Lorenz down whilst he's building up his Reggie board. As he does pass over to Lorenz now to kick off his turn with a Flower selecting.
Absolutely. Worth noting, of course, we did see the choice bar on the Regidrago. That is actually, when you're not hitting for weakness, that is your most powerful attacker in the deck, so decent chance to pop it there. So the Flower selecting gets rid of a Battle VIP pass. That, oh, you know his hand is stacked.
Yeah, definitely. It was a really awkward choice because it was a Chorus's experiment as well.
Oh, that's not fun.
So having a choice of being able to see into 5 additional cards against just kind of getting his board set up, maybe doesn't have that stadium bounce because that Battle VIP pass typically used to get maybe another Confe and the concealed cards, Radiant Greninja, but that path just slowing things down right now as he gets his first look through the deck to just work out his prizes.
Yeah, it's always important to go and have a look. Like we said, Laurence, there's very little that's actually prized here, so that is not a huge problem. But it is just still making sure you've got everything you need, that you're not going to run out. The worst-case scenario is you realise that you've got a couple of Metal Energy prized, and then you discard one, then you lost zone one, and then that's why you have to check your prizes. Because if you know, I've got all 4 Metal Energy in my deck, if it's a really awkward decision, you can still lost zone one knowing the rest are available. If you've got 1 or 2 in your prizes, then that actually changes. There are certain certain things that if you know their prize, you cannot lost zone other copies of them, because then you essentially just run out. And there is a chance here for Lawrence to have a really strong turn two. We know we got Chorus's Experiment here, so we could get a bunch of cards in the lost zone, bunch of cards drawn. We could even see an attack with something like a Cramorant just doing 110 onto the Reg Drago. It's not going to KO, but it could at least, you know, start getting some damage on the board. No,
it'll apply some pressure, which is sometimes what you'd like. And if Matthias is not able to use something like a scoop-up net to sort of bring it out of the active, Laurent also plays things like the Zigzagoon, which with a couple of drops here and there could just take an extra KO, help him jump over a prize whilst taking a knockout with another attacker. Just wanted to double check that concealed cards with Path to the Peak. Yep, good catch by Matthias there.
Oh, good work.
There's the Temple of Sinnoh. It was all mapped out in Laurent's mind.
Yeah, but it's nice to see it, of course. There's nothing untoward happening. Of course, Greninja can also hit 90 to 2 Pokemon, so we could see, you know, an attack from Cramorant and then finish off on the bench with Greninja later. So we can see some kind of awkward... The problem is, until we actually see the Goodra getting the attacks off, we're not going to see really many KOs here, because those Reggies are just out of reach of someone like a Cramorant. But we could see some attacks combining here to take some more awkward KOs. But sometimes that's better than just kind of sitting there letting your Comfey get KO'd anyway. Yeah, I think applying that little bit of pressure, even with the Cramorant, because if you're going to give up some maybe single prizes anyway, you don't want to really be giving up the Comfeys where possible. Yeah. So you get them out the active, have them on your bench. If a Cramorant does put some pressure onto Matthias' side of the board and it goes down, you're not too worried, because you can continue bursting through those lost zone cards through flower selecting. And then you have little to sort of worry about from your sort of consistency point of view. As Laurent continues to kind of go through his deck, of course, had a slightly longer first deck search as well. Just kind of double-checking his energies, his supporters, and, of course, his Pokemon. Yeah, we do see a quick ball coming out here for a second Comfey, which is going to be quite good. Extra flower selecting, of course. We know there are 3 in the lost zone, so if Lawrence wants to go for the potential Cramorant play, he will need 1 more in the lost zone. That would be achieved here. We see the switch, and now it's a question, and this is basically what Lawrence wanted turn 1. 4 cards in the lost zone is about the best you can hope for unless you have a really amazing turn. So this, drops the Chorus's Experiment is not ideal at all. No, it was a Metal Energy or that Chorus Experiment. But again, as you kind of mentioned, Ross, it's that view of maybe that means his hands is already stacked. So he doesn't need it yet again, as it goes back over to Matthias and straight in with the double research being discarded and 2 energies as well. Still needs to find another way to get another Aurora, typically, to get sort of attacks going, as well as the bench Reggies. But yeah, let's see what Matthias is able to pull off here. I mean, he's going to need... Oh, there's a Reggie. So now we just need 2 more Reggies. We need Registeel and Reg Ice, if I'm seeing those correctly. And then, like you say, maybe another Aurora in the discard. But certainly, he's not a million miles away. And this is what's terrifying. We see the Path to the Peak coming down. This is what's terrifying about playing the Reggie's deck. Those first couple of turns, you need to get all the energy in the discard and the 6 Reggies. After that, it's a bit more upkeep. It's a little more kind of exhale time. But the first couple turns, trying to get the combo established can be super awkward. Yeah, it was a really interesting decision here for Matthias, because he could go down to a 0-card hand to Dragon's Horde, but then it would mean he'd have to remove all Professor's Research from play, because he's already discarded 2, or used 1 and discarded 1. He's got 2 in hand, so he's had to just Ultra Ball away the Twin Energy and the Research, gets his Registeel, so it's just that Reg Ice now, so he will be able to just Dragon's Horde for an additional 2 cards with the Aurora still in hand to still play and get an attachment off. He just needs to somehow find a Ball Search of some sort. Yeah, or just a Reg Ice. Yeah, or just a Reg Ice itself. That would do just fine. But this will be good. I mean, if you can get a KO on the Comfey here, and this is what we were saying, you know, you're not just taking a KO, you're also... Oh, so it is just attach your Aurora Energy. So now there's no research left. Do we have a Reg Ice or a way to find it? I think that was a ball, but it's an awkward... Is that a ball in the 4th card? I couldn't quite tell. It was, he passes over. So gets rid of all 4 Professor's Research. And that's kind of a sigh of relief from Lawrence there, because chose to leave a Comfey in the active, not punished for it. There is the the Chorus's Experiment, hence why 1 got lost zoned. And this basically means that after the flower selecting, we got 7 cards in the lost zone. That turns on Mirage Gate to accelerate energy to the Hisuian Goodra, and we could see Hisuian Goodra rolling next turn. Oh, this turn, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just a few different pieces there. That was some quick choices, that Galarian Zigzagoon and the Battle VIP pass instantly hitting the lost zone there, as now Lorenz has to work out his own sequencing, as we've always talked about these kind of decks, those micro decisions to best utilize those higher percentages in terms of how he does things. The boss has to hit the lost zone now because he wants to keep his energies around as well, as he does use concealed cards. So drawing through his deck as per usual, as expected with a Lost Zone engine.
Doesn't want to draw too many energy because he needs some in the deck to actually grab out with the Mirage Gate.
We do just see the path to the peak once again. He has drawn 2 cards. It's gone to his hand.
And we are in day 2 of a regional, so we have a rule basically whereby, well, not read special event, but same kind of level.
Yeah.
The point is, the further you get into a tournament and the larger the tournament, the more the penalties tend to escalate. So if you're playing in a League Challenge or a League Cup when those come back, you know, it's not the end of the world. You know, round 1 or 2, people are probably going to, you know, a bit of a warning, it's fine. But here we're in day 2 of a special event. This is, you know, a far more kind of serious game, a far more important game with all those championship points on the line. So this is why it becomes a much bigger deal. Because we do see these kind of escalating up. The head judge is going to come over, make a bit of a ruling. As always, you know, when we get a ruling, we are going to be told. However, this gives us a great time to point out the difference between a regional and a special event, which we know the chat have been asking about. Would you like to take this one, Alex?
I could take a little bit, but feel free to chime in when you absolutely need to as well. So the special event here, again, for the same type of size nowadays, because it's massively grown, our game, particularly in Europe, is at the same level in terms of the kind of CP available as prizes, in terms of what you could be gaining for your World's invite or working towards your invite. The only slight difference is there is no prize money on the line, but it's all about thinking, you know, you're getting that CP for your World's invite, for potentially pushing into the top 16s for the stipends, or whether it's just the World's invite in general, top 22, of course, as well. It's completely massive from that respect. You still get fantastic prizes. You're still battling for those fantastic medals that we have now as well, for the champion, the runner-up, and I believe top 4 also get it as well. But it's to also just to be called a champion at this TCG game.
Everybody understands that these special events are very big and, you know, really prestigious at the moment. That is a very big deal. It is, so here are the championship points available. So this is fantastic. Shout out to the lovely pigs backstage for hooking us up here. So we can see this is for both special events and for regionals. And then you can see there are booster pack prizes available. However, there's no prize money here. But by the same token, there's also no entry fee. These are free to enter tournaments. So you don't get your promo and your mat like you generally would as standard, but they're free to enter, but you don't get prize money. But when you're actually sitting down playing, you're still in a tournament with hundreds of players. All the best players in Europe tend to come out to regionals and special events, so they are still incredibly competitive.
Yeah, and we've been slowly creeping up to that 800 kicker for quite some time now from our most recent events, and this is our largest ever special event. This is basically a regional level for all of the same amount of CPs that one would get at a regional as well. And then, of course, moving on, going forward, we've got an even bigger tournament coming up next month at EUIC. Just another opportunity to gain a massive amount of CP, but you know, the 75 players in day 2 are focusing to work hard to try and gain and gather all of these championship points in this tournament first, of course.
Yeah, because of course you can see there are so many championship points available that, you know, a lot of these players in day 2, if they haven't already made their invite, all they need is, you know, a few extra wins, and they're going to get themselves in a position where their finish that does give them their invite. And I know a lot of players are going to get their invite at internationals in 4 weeks' time, because let's face it, there are a lot of 500 just for winning that. However, everyone wants to go to EUIC with their invite already secured.
Yes.
You want to have your invite and go to EUIC fighting for points to get top 22 and get your stipend and your day 2 invite to Yokohama and to the World Championships. You don't really want to be trying to get your invite at EUIC if you can help it. So for these players in day 2 here, obviously the goal is top 8, yeah?
Yes.
That's for everybody. But there comes a point for most of the players, unfortunately, when you're cutting from 75 to 8, this is inevitable, where they're out. They ain't making top 8. but they can still get their Worlds invite if they get enough points.
Yeah, and not just that, you know, all those prizes that you already mentioned, those booster packs, and then other different levels of events, you get those prize money as well. I mean, with EUIC, it's just going to be such a prestigious event because of how big it's going to be for the first time. It's going to rival what we have across the pond for NAIC, for example. This is what's going to make it so exciting, as we do just get news that we are going back to our game now. The judge has been able to confirm exactly what's happened. There will be a double prize penalty for Lorenz because he has drawn those cards and it did go into his hand. So that ambiguity of not knowing what those cards would be from tier side, you know, these are the rules and we just have to follow them. But we kick back off still with Loren's side, and he does have that Hisun Gudra V-Star now on his board.
And that is always a good thing. Liminia is not going to be needed. We should actually just confirm the rules on double prize penalties changed a little while ago. Matthias doesn't actually take the prizes. What happens is he only needs to take 4 prizes to win the game. So although there are still 6 there, he only needs to take 4 of them in order to actually win the game. So Lorenz there, end to turn with a Hisun Gudra V-Star, doesn't get it into the active, doesn't actually get enough energy on to start attacking, unfortunately. So that gives Matthias another turn before Hisun Gudra V-Star comes out, and you've got to think he wants a prize this turn.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the only tricky thing Matthias now has is because of those researches all in the discard pile. So in terms of consistency, he only will have access to things like Marnie if he's been able to draw into it, and I don't think he necessarily was able to. He's played this Ordinary Rod to get it out of his hand, does have that gift energy, which we know is fantastic to help draw cards up. So actually, he does have Marnie. There you go. I mean, what am I talking about? He just has it. It's absolutely fine. As he does shuffle up, and both players have to pull it to the bottom of the deck. Matthias will be drawing 5 and Lorenz will only be drawing 4.
This is a situation where I really love Marnie, because you want to get the red dice, it's not in your hand, but because your cards go to the bottom of your deck of a Marnie, you know you're not redrawing your hand that didn't have red dice in, so it gives you higher odds of getting a red dice than, say, a shuffle draw 5, a Shauna would actually give you here. So it's a nice little bonus, but does he actually get the red dice? Because he needs it this turn. You can't keep not attacking. If you don't take any prizes and then the Gudra comes out and starts one-hit KOing all of your Reggies, that is going to make for an awkward matchup for Matthias. We do have a quick ball, though.
There you go.
I'm confident this is going to be a red dice.
Well, I'd be a bit worried if it wasn't, in all honesty. But we do see the discard of the Reggie. Like, he obviously just did use the ordinary rod to actually chuck it back in, and now it's going straight back in the discard, which is a bit unfortunate. But, you know, he is going to be looking to attack this turn. It's such a massive advantage now. Oh, he's actually discarding it. Oh, he has one in hand as well, and he wants to use Dragon's Sword to maybe draw up cards. Yeah, I think that's exactly how he's thinking it. He does have one in hand. Ordinary rods them both back in. Wants the Dragon Horse for a new fresh 4 cards, and then start swinging away with that Regidrago as soon as possible.
It's making me nervous, Alex. It's making me nervous because right now we've got, you know, there's only one ordinary rod left in the deck now. He plays 3. He's just used 2. There's 1 left. We know there's a Regieleki price. There's only 2 available. We know there's a Regirock price and there's only 1 available. Ordinary rod is where you start getting these back. And now I understand what Matthias is doing. He needs to dig with a Dragon's Horde. I'm not saying he shouldn't be doing this. I'm saying that because he has to kind of go down this route, it means that when Lorenz starts actually KOing these Reggies, it's going to be harder to get them back. We've actually got the last ordinary rod in hand. You've got to think that's being safe for when KOs get taken.
Yeah, he's got some very good cards in his hand there as well to kind of replenish some other Reggies where available. Does have the energies ready to go in his discard pile. So Ancient Wisdom is now, of course, live. I think he's just kind of working out which is the better attacker to potentially be using in this scenario, because he doesn't really want to sacrifice the Regidrago if it stays in the active spot, as he does go with the Regigigas, making it a little bit harder to be KO'd with one of those sort of single prizes. So Lorenz has to start bringing up that Gudra, and does now start to use Ancient Wisdom with that double twin in the discard and the gift energy, of course, now to kind of give him a bit of a safe haven if this Regigigas goes down, because he knows he's got it in hand already.
And you've got high enough HP here that you know your opponent can't, say, use Cramorant and stretch a little bit, which is potentially an option for Lorenz, although we know the Zigzagoon is in the loss zone. It basically forces your opponent to bring the the Gudra out this turn and start rolling with it. So this is kind of what it comes down to. Matthias would love to have an extra prize or two taken at this stage, but what we're going to see instead is a KO on the Reggie, but that gift energy letting you draw until you have 7 cards in your hand, which is lovely. So now Matthias needs to get a Regigigas out, and we need to see what the best attacker for this situation is. Do you want to just try getting damage on with Regidrago, or do you want to go for Regice and try and stop your opponent attacking, force them to start switching around to get attacks off?
Yeah, I think I would love to see the Regice come up and use Blizzard Bind to kind of limit what Lawrence has available for himself, because right now it's just the one Hisuian Gudra V-Star out on his board right now. Has opted to look at try and limit that rolling iron, so now this resets the effect of that attack. If he's able to somehow gust it back up and sort of deal some bigger damage where possible, you know, with the Reggie's deck, you can't quite one-hit the decks like Hisuian Gudra V-Star, but if he's able to just target down something like the Comfey, he's only 2 prizes away. So maybe that's just his game plan right now.
That might be it, to be honest with you. It might just be, I want to take cheeky prizes. I love the whole, resetting, because when Gudra attacks, it takes 80 damage the next turn. But we got a general rule whereby if a Pokemon hits the bench and becomes active, it essentially resets all the effects on it. It's like it's just been coming active for the first time. So I do like this. You can either reset it and try and go after the Gudra, or you can just go after a Comfey. The one thing you didn't really want to do was hit into the reducing Gudra. So either of these ways could work. And you see Matthias here, this isn't an easy decision for him.
No, not at all. And I think it's one of those things where he started to sort of think about the resources he has gone through. As you already mentioned, the double ordinary rod's already been played into the discard. Does have the final one in hand. And as you mentioned, he's got to save it for the right moment. There's just showing the marker for us and you guys watching the stream as well, that he's using the Ancient Wisdom ability. Looks like he's not going to be attacking with the Regigigas this time, as he opts for 2 Auroras. And is that a capture energy there? Yep, this is another option here, because he can take the knockout on the Comfey, as I mentioned earlier, and then just sprinkle some damage onto some of those Gudras just on the bench, because those Gudras won't want to use their V-Star ability when that path to the peak gets bumped.
No, and I really like this. Your Regidrago is your biggest attacker. You don't want to leave it in the firing line. Your Regice is really good at stopping the Gudra, so that's only going to come up against the Gudra. You need something that can KO the Comfey, which is any of them. So let's actually then instead just focus in on, let's get a bit of bench damage. And you did see Matthias taking advantage of that scoop up there to use Reggie's ability a second time.
Yeah, similar to what we typically see with Radiant Greninja when it's used concealed cards once. It's typically picked up using scoop up net and can be benched to be reused again, because when cards go into your hand, it's like hidden knowledge. So when you bench a second Radiant Greninja, it theoretically could be a second one. So that's why you're allowed to continue using it where available too. But we do see the knockout there now. Matthias going down to 4 prizes, just 2 more to take in this matchup. I would imagine Laurens want to try and find that Hisuian Gudra V-Star to evolve onto his bench as well, and look to scoop up that Radiant Greninja, just so that it means that he has to go through to Gudra V-Stars instead.
Yeah, that's always a good thing, where you can force your opponent into having to go through your biggest Pokemon. To be honest with you, even if you leave the Radiant Greninja down, as long as you don't bench anything else, Matthias, even if he KOs a Greninja, still has to KO the 2 Hisuian Gudra in order to pass that 6 prize mark, what we refer to as a 7 prize game, forcing your opponent to KO a 2 prize Pokemon when they've got 1 prize remaining. So I'm kind of loving this from Laurens here, and, just taking 2 prizes, evened it up. The thing is, we know Laurens is going to sit there taking a prize every single turn with Hisuian Gudra. That's not the problem. The question now is whether Matthias can kind of slow him down or stop him. He's not going to get giant KOs. That's not what his deck does. So I think at this stage, I'd want to be using the Regice and maybe just trying to slow the game down a little bit. The problem is, all it takes is like a switch V-Star Mirage Gate, and actually there's 2 of them. And at that stage, it becomes a much less enticing prospect. So it's it's rough for Matthias here. I think at this stage of the game, Laurent is definitely on the front foot.
He is, but he's got to try and make use and take advantage of that, I suppose. Unfortunate double prize penalty for Laurent here. But of course, with that, Hisuian Gudra using that rolling island attack, taking 80 less damage from attacks from your opponent's next turn. That Regigigas, which typically deals 150 with that Gigaton break, will only be dealing 70 damage. So this is, as you mentioned, kind of gives that advantage back to Laurent. And that's why he's still kind of sitting fairly comfortably, despite knowing he's behind because of that double prize penalty.
Yeah, an excellent point about the double prize penalty. Of course, he doesn't need to KO the two Hisuian Gudra. If he KOs one of them, that will put him at the win here. So Laurent is not going to bench a single prize Pokemon. That is not going to happen. It is just down to whether Matthias can actually go for this. And it's such an awkward situation here because it's so hard to deal decent damage.
I've just noticed, I think he's only one card off from actually, if he had a Boss or Serena in hand, he would have actually been able to gust up that Hisuian Gudra V on the bench. And with 220 HP and a Gigas doing 150 plus 30 with the Choice Belt, that would have actually given him the KO on the two-prizer. But he's just had to attack into the Hisuian Gudra V-Star. And there's the Moisture Star V-Star ability as well, just healing off all that damage. Laurent really needs to evolve this bench Hisuian Gudra just to make sure it's just out of range for any sort of trickery from Matthias right now.
Yeah, that is incredibly important. You're right there. A Boss's orders would end the game for Matthias here. He could take the KO. He could take the KO with Regigigas, or he'd need to choose back for anything, but he's got one on the Regidrago,
Yeah,
so the
that's very
Regidrago
true.
could also do it. So yeah, that evolution has got to be a huge thing here. And also, if Laurent does get a double Hisuian Gudra V-Star, that does basically mean that Regice becomes way less effective because you can just switch between them.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, just as we were saying that he should be looking for that Gust. I think there's only one Gust remaining. Oh, he's got it. But Matthias has actually prized his one-off Boss and one of his two Serenas as well. So, I mean, that kind of stretch just unfortunately wasn't really available for Matthias there, as Laurent does get a chance to use Concealed Cards a couple of times, it looks like, as he begins to work through his deck and now execute his game plan of just having this big, bulky, Dragon-type Pokemon available.
And this is one of the reasons Hisuian Gudra V-Star is seen as a good play from people this weekend, because this is kind of not dissimilar to how the Lost Box matchup goes. You want to be playing these single prize decks where you take a prize every turn, and they struggle so much to be able to extend far enough to actually be able to get a KO, and that means that it kind of makes it so awkward for your opponent. So we do see the KO here. Now the gift energy, doesn't do anything because Temple of Sinnoh is turning it into a single energy. So good job on Matthias there, not making that mistake.
Great sportsmanship between both players, because of course Laurent has accidentally had that draw already through Concealed Cards under path, and Laurent's just stopping Matthias from drawing more cards himself through, because of the Temple of Sinnoh, stopping that gift energy, activating there. But again, just highlighting how some of these cards within Laurent's deck, not only is the Gudra just really annoying to be able to attack into, but just extra utility cards like the Temple of Sinnoh really causing chaos, because right now even those Aurora energies are currently shut off.
Yeah, Temple of Sinnoh is a devastating card against Regis. It's one of those cards, if your Regi matchup is a little bit awkward, it has become one of the go-to cards to players attack against these Regigigas decks, because they're so reliant on your Aurora energy, on your gift energy, on your double turbo energy or twin energy, just trying to make sure that you've got all these different options, even your speed lightning energy. Do not draw two cards.
Ooh, okay. Good. Again, great.
That was pretty close, but he caught it, and that was good. We caught it as well, but I mean, for obvious reasons, they can't hear us. That would be very bad.
No, like, again, great sportsmanship from Laurent, just to say, don't do that. You know, this is not what you want to be doing at this current moment in time. But yeah, just very, very well caught by yourself, Ross, and Laurent there, just to make sure no more confusion and penalties are provided in this matchup. But, you know, when you're playing out your hand, you're kind of just sometimes doing a bit of solitaire yourself. You're playing out your hand to make sure it's, you know, maximizing those chances. He's still got Dragon's Horde to keep going as well. And sometimes it can just you can just miss some things.
Well, the thing to remember is it's muscle memory here. You play it, you draw 2 cards. Back when I had a car that had a physical key, I would regularly lock people in my car. So I'd shut the door, I'd lock the door, and then realise there's people sitting in the car. It's just muscle memory. You play your speed energy, you draw 2 cards. So it can be just that simple. And, you know, if you're watching the stream and going, how can these really high-level players try drawing when there's Temple of Sinnoh out? Because you play speed energy and draw 2 cards. You're not thinking about anything else. So,
are you saying you really weren't locking people on purpose there, Ross?
I am saying I most definitely was not. So now, unfortunately, we've still got that Temple of Sinnoh in play. Matthias plays 4 Path to the Peak here. So he's got a bunch of outs here to get rid of it. But, oh, my goodness. And that is going to be, that I think is a pivotal moment in the game. Matthias missing an attack there because of that Temple of Sinnoh. Laurence is going to go down to 2 prizes remaining. And they're both actually going to be at 2 prizes remaining, but if I'm playing this game, I want to be in Lauren's position and not Matthias.
Yeah, 100%. Just that rolling iron sort of working its way through that Reggie deck now. And Laurence doesn't really need to do too much more, even if Matthias somehow gusts up the Radiant Greninja, takes a knockout on that. He still needs to work through one of these Hisuian Gudra V-Stars, and that's what causes a lot of problems. And Laurence has to kind of double-check Matthias's discards, probably double-check those Reggies, what to target down, knowing the ordinary rods are now been played.
Yeah.
So he's seeing that, I think, Reggie Rock there, and that's typically, as you've already mentioned, never played in more than 2 of.
No, Regirock is a pretty safe 2 of in most decks. So is Red to Steel. They are the 2 that you can pretty much guarantee are going to be 2 ofs. Regi, sometimes you'll see a cheeky third. Regieleki, you usually see a third. Regidrago, maybe. But Regice and Registeel and Regirock, you sound pretty good. But we see there that we've got basically just... Laurence here has basically got the game sewn up. And this is that situation where you feel pretty sure you're going to win the game. So it's look at your opponent's board, check the discard pile, make sure you've not missed anything. But honestly, at this stage, you should just attack 3 times. And your opponent, especially without a counter stadium, is just not going to do enough damage to get a KO. You're reducing it by 80, even if they can attack. And right now, Matthias can't attack.
Yeah, and it's just another rolling iron there, knocking that Regidrago out. Of course, Matthias does have the Regidrago in hand as well to sort of replenish back onto the board. But it just means Laurence just has another easier target should he go down that route. As we do see the attachment there of the capture energy to the active, of course, full bench, unable to activate even with Temple of Sinnoh anyway. The choice belt attached, and it's just pretty much a 1-card hand now. Not ideal. Looks like he wants to go into Dragon's Horde again, despite it being his last one. I guess he still has that out to use Ancient Wisdom, but he finds a Marnie.
He's got the Marnie, to be fair. I don't think he's played a support this turn, has he?
No, he's not.
No. So we can play the Marnie, and it's just, at this stage, if Matthias doesn't get a stadium, he is locked out of this game. Regis can do nothing productive under lock. The only option, if you are under a Temple of Sinnoh lock, is 5 individual special energy cards on a Regigigas to use Gigaton Break. That's the only real attack you've... I know there are technically Regigate and stuff like that, but my point is, in terms of good attacks you actually want to use under a Temple of Sinnoh lock, your only real option is Regigigas with 5 different special energies on, or 5 separate, and that is not what you want. But we do finally see Path to the Peak.
Yeah, and now that kind of activates all of those special energies in Matthias's discard now, but he's still just under that kind of, let's say, soft lock of rolling iron, just reducing all of that damage. You know, as we already mentioned with these Reggie's deck, they are typically sort of 2-hit KOs that it's taking, unless you kind of count the Regigigas when it's hitting a VMAX with a choice belt attached to it. But, you know, just in this scenario, that reduction of 80 is just so much. It becomes a 3-4 hit KO, and that's really not ideal.
No, and you've got to get a 2-hit KO right now. You need to get a hit this turn. Laurence takes the prize, you take the win. If you do not get a 2-hit KO on one of these Gudra, you will lose the game, because Laurence is going to take a prize the next 2 turns. We've got 2 Hisuian Gudra set up, we've got all the energy you need. Laurence basically needs to just announce rolling irons twice, and that's going to be the game. What I'm thinking of if I'm Matthias here is this game's been going on a long time, and I think your chance of winning if you're Matthias here is very, very low. And sure, there's a decent chance game 2 doesn't finish and you lose the set. And here we go. Here is a concession from Matthias. You need to try and now win a quicker game 2. You're probably not going to win games 2 and 3, but at least try and salvage a tie out of this. Try and win yourself a nice quick game 2, and maybe even a game 3. You never know. Congratulations to Laurence there. That was what Gudra does.
Yes, exactly. And that's why we've seen so many into the day 2 right now, right? We saw Stefan Ivanov play in, I believe, our round 1, you know, to a fantastic effect where it's just locking out the lost box because it's not doing enough damage as well. And this is, as you mentioned, it's the same story here, that Rolling Irons taking KOs on those single prizes, but then just reducing all of that, well, pretty much all of that damage. Moisture Star also then wiping off any additional sort of remnants of damage as well. And yeah, to full effect, that double prize penalty not really impacting him.
No, and that's the thing. His opponent only had to take 4 prizes, and he still won the game kind of going away. And Regigigas is a relevant deck. We've seen Raw already over in North America, having some really good finishes lately. We saw, I think it was a top 4 finish at Oceania with the deck, and it's a very good deck. And one of the things Gudra does is says, look, I feel really good against Lost Box, and I feel really good against Reggie's. And make no mistake, this is a matchup that Hisui and Gudra loves to see. Because like we saw in game 1, you set up, and you just take a prize, take a prize, take a prize, take a prize. And especially with Temple of Sinnoh as well, it is a real uphill struggle for the Regigigas player. You need a fast start, you need to see some cheeky prizes early on, and essentially you need to start really pressuring your opponent before they're set up.
Yeah, there was a few turns where it was just the one Hisui and Gudra V-Star that was out, so maybe that was the opportune moment to find a way to use something like Visibine and really stop Laurence from really getting going, because then if there were 2, as you already mentioned, he can sort of switch between the 2 and just keep that rolling iron just constantly back and back to back. But in this scenario, the game plan works for Gudra just exactly as it's shown. You know, it's just doing its thing, doesn't have to really worry about the Reggies in general, whilst Reggies has to work a little bit harder. And that's something that Matthias has just got to try and take advantage of. Just start trying to use the Regieleki, I think, to start sniping 40 damages here where he can, and just put it into range, because he was actually just 1 gust away. I think we caught it a little bit just towards the end of that turn, but we did just about catch it.
Oh, Serena is prized again here, so there's only 2 gusting options available if that comes up again. Ooh. 1 Registeel is going to be a problem, because like I say, that is always played as a 2 of. The Regieleki, less of a problem. So, yeah, not terrible prizes, not great. You're usually going to have a Reggie or 2 prized, honestly. But yes, I agree. I think Regieleki, for setting up a KO on a Pokemon V before it evolves into that V-Star, we almost saw it work in the previous game. I would love to see that be a focus for Matthias this game. But still, turn 1, the deal is the same. Get your Reggies, get energy in a discard, and we see very little. We've lost an ordinary rod, and that is about it. 1 Reggie, 1 energy, 1 tool.
Could we ever see the stretch here where Laurence goes for the Cramorant attack and double Zig ping?
Oh, that would be amazing. Okay. Oh, he's put Zig up. He's put Zig up at the top there, so he's at least thinking about it.
It's definitely available. I mean, he's already on a bit of a back foot because he had to start that Drapion V, which is one of the few Pokemon which the Reggies could one-hit KO with their Regirock. Again, not a typical attacker, but because it is weak to fighting, does take, you know, we've already said how Reggie's hit for weakness. Regirock dealing 140 with Giga Impact, and that's enough to take a KO on a Drapion V. Another way of taking 2 easy prizes, but Laurence does have a way of just taking this game right now, depending on how this Luminium V and sort of double checking what's available to him, because he does have double Quick Ball prized.
Yeah, and this is an awkward situation for Laurence here, because basically, if you get 4 cards in a Lost Zone, and you get your Cramorant out, and then you get your Galarian Zigzagoon and a Scoop up there, you could do 130 and win the game right here. But by the same token, you just won game 1, even though you had a double prize card penalty assessed against you, and it was actually a pretty straightforward game. And what you don't want to do, you know, you've now put a Luminion down. That's kind of 2 easy prizes for Matthias. Yeah. You've got your Drapion out. That's 2 easy prizes for Matthias. One of the ways that Matthias wins against an unfavorable matchup like this is actually ignoring the Gudra and just going, there are 6 other prizes available. I'm going to go after them. And if Matthias can get a cheeky prize or 2 off a Comfey and then start getting some gusting going, that is how Matthias wins game 2.
Yeah, no, you've called it completely out there. And with that Luminion, just another Pokemon that gets hit for weakness for an easy KO, just as you kind of just very much highlighted there, Ross. Those easy prizes are potentially available to him. So it's whether Lorenz kind of goes gung-ho here and potentially just wins in one turn, which is completely viable. That's why sometimes Cramorant is still in decks like Lost Box Gudra and not just in its own Lost Box deck itself. So let's just see the kind of direction Lorenz takes this. He just used a Capture Energy to grab that Greninja, utilizing concealed cards sort of as soon as possible, just to kind of see what he gets, because he did grab that Chorus Experiment from Luminion.
Yeah, I mean, we all know it's the kind of thing I would do, but that's not necessarily always the best plan. I love these giant reachy stretch plays. We do see a Battle VIP Baz coming down. That's going to get a couple of extra basics. Or just a one, actually. Just a single Hisuian Gudra V. So there is a chance for Matthias here to get a 2-hit KO on that Gudra. You know, potentially with the 40 ping from the Regieleki, followed by a KO with the Regigigas or the Regidrago with a Choice Band or Choice Belt. It's a lot to ask for, but that would actually be a really good option if Matthias can stretch that far, which again is a far from a given.
Yeah, of course. We highlighted the play which would allow Lorenz to potentially win in one turn. Cramorant being able to do 110, and then Zigzagoon's shenanigans potentially stretching to that 130. But Lorenz playing it safe. With Hisuian Gudra V onto the bench there. We have two cards now going straight to the Lost Zone from the Chorus Experiment. That's Metal Energy and a Raihan there. That makes it kind of means the other three cards must be good, right? Yeah,
you don't want to be getting rid of the energy and you don't want to be getting rid of the Raihan, so this is quite nice. We do actually just see a pass, it looks like. So Matthias, there are enough prizes there for Matthias to potentially win this game without worrying about a Gudra V-Star. One of the awkward things is that Serena is prized, so that is going to give you two gusting options rather than three. You hope you can get out the prizes as the kind of last one before you win. We see Path to the Peak, we see a couple of Reggies, we see a Trekking Shoes. We're for another Reggie for the Registeel. That's quite nice, bearing in mind the other one is prized. If we could see a big start here, KO from the Regirock, Matthias basically needs to take a prize without gusting here, and then could potentially round out this game, ignoring the Gudra.
Yeah, he's researched into, again, a really good hand. Multiple Reggies available. The Trekking Shoes giving him that Registeel, the Quick Ball giving him the Regieleki, has speed energy to draw another two cards, maybe something else to work with before even having to use Dragon's Horde. And let's just see if he's just one away now. That Regice just being a little elusive right now, but let's see if he's able to pull it out of the bag, because there's a few options here. Will he just attach that speed energy to the Regieleki, draw two cards, and then Dragon's Horde, or will he go for the free? He goes for the free.
Oh, he's going for the free.
Oh, there's a Quick Ball and an Ultra Ball, so we will see the Regice if we were expecting maybe an Ancient Wisdom this turn.
It's always Regice. Both games, it's Regice just not coming out to play. Here is the Quick Ball. Literally has to be for a Regice, because otherwise your deck is literally not functioning. So we're going to get the Regice out here. I've not really been following exactly what energy is in the discard pile here. I know we've obviously got an Aurora energy. We can see that at the top. But if we have a pivoting option and enough energy in the discard, we could actually see Regirock here taking a very quick KO on the
Drapion.
On the Drapion, yeah. I'm just trying to do the maths on the Regidrago here.
Yeah,
but it's 160 plus 30, 190. Drapion has 210, so it's not happening.
But, as we've mentioned and highlighted a few times, maybe he could then use the Regieleki to ping it later. So it's an easy prize, because there's no way to heal it.
No.
So that's another sort of cheeky way to take two prizes a little later. I will save you onto the bench and try and take out maybe a Comfort instead at the same time.
Yeah, and there's no mana fee or anything like that here. So, no, if you can't get the KO with Regirock, that is absolutely the best play here. Kind of set it up for later, knowing those two prizes. And yeah, it does look like that's where we're going. Of course, you don't get the draw from the speed energy. Here, it is just going on there as just an energy card. And it looks like we're going to see the 190 hit, but that...
Oh, no, she's not knocked out. Just the 190. There you go.
It's 20 away from being KO'd. That's kind of the point. And then you've got the bench damage of Reggie Lecky, which will finish it off nicely.
Yeah, I really like that Giant Fangs attack there, because it's still utilizing the choice belt and not really wasting sort of those attachments that he's made in the first turn. And also still has the path to the peak down as well. So again, just trying to limit the amount of Radiant Greninja draw for the moment at least, because if Laurence finds a Temple Sinnoh, again, making sure he puts that down before he uses it. We do see the Hisuian Gudra V-Star immediately come down, as well as the Lost Zone counter hits to 4.
Yeah, that is turning on Cramorant if he wishes to use it. Of course, that's not really going to be a huge KO or anything like that. What you want to be doing is stretching for 7 so that you can use that Mirage Gate to get Hisuian Gudra V-Star firing. Probably fair to say that it's unlikely that's going to be a doable thing this turn. He's probably going to have to wait till next turn. So what does Laurence do? I mean, can he even get the Drapion out the active? Does he want to get the Drapion out the active? Like, if you're going to be KO'd by the residual damage from Reggie Lecky, sometimes it's worth just leaving it in the active, going, look, you're going to KO it anyway. At least this time you have to do the full damage rather than next turn using Comfey and getting it with residual damage, for instance.
Yeah, I think exactly that. It's going to be an interesting decision to see what Laurence, the direction he goes down for. Obviously, he's already used the energy attachment from hand to the bench Hisuian Gudra V-Star to grab the other Hisuian Gudra V. So it looks like he might just leaving it as a bit of a sacrifice in the active spot right now, because Matthias, of course, can still play an escape rope of his own. I believe he has that one copy in there to try and maneuver out of the active spot, which would cause Laurence to be, you know, in a really tricky spot, because he'd have to send something up that would take sort of big damage or massive damage. But he does just leave it in the active as it goes to Matthias. And there's the first ordinary rod of the game as well. We know he's been quite happy to use them to sort of protect those Reggies that have been discarded nice and early.
And he only plays one rope, but I would love to see an escape rope here from Matthias, just so he could get a double KO here, take at least 3 prizes straight off the bat. Don't get me wrong, he can potentially get a hit and then KO the Drapion. That's fine, but it's not really going to... You're not getting full value. You're kind of two-hit KOing. Exactly. I want to be getting a double prize here. That's what I'm trying to work towards, Alex.
Of course, but I think he's just not been able to. Yeah, he's not been able to reach it, so has just had to go for the Giant Fangs. But again, you know, you would have wanted to maximize the value, as you mentioned, but this is still pretty good value, I suppose. You're giving up potentially 1 prize with the gift energy attached now as well, and taking 2 prizes. So advantage Matthias right now. He's back in that same spot where he has to take 4 more prizes to win.
Yeah, and but he's so much better. This is the difference. The fact that he's taken those prizes before the Hisuian Gudra has really come out and started wreaking havoc. That is the difference here. And we've got the Luminion out there, which is fairly easy in terms of prizes. Yep. It's that Hisuian. You want to be able to reach to KO the Hisuian Gudra V, but you can't. So, I mean, maybe try the 2-hit KO on that. The problem is he's running out of gusting, is Matthias. He can still do it if he uses boss's orders on single prize Pokemon, pulls the Serena out of his prizes and uses that on the Luminion. That is 4 prizes, that is a win. But if he takes the wrong prize from the top and misses a Serena, that will actually fail and force him to go through the Hisuian Gudra. So Matthias has a way to gust to victory here, but it's awkward.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit awkward, as I think, as you mentioned, that kind of prize mapping route that he needs to find. So maybe he's got to hope that Laurence has to somehow sacrifice another single prize attacker, maybe one of those easy Comfeys or just a Radiant Greninja, because it's being blocked right now by Path. Takes the easy prize and escape rope goes into another single prizer possibly, and then, or as you mentioned, use the boss for a single prizer and the ace one of his 2 Serenas onto that Luminion, just sat there waiting. As we do see a Mirage Gate come down now, so it looks like we will see potentially a rolling irons here, and just start swinging away from Laurent's side of the board.
And which is what he needs to do at this stage, right? This is what's so important about this particular game, because at this stage, it is very much a case of, I need to start rolling. I can't give up an extra easy prize. I can't do it. That is not the way this game is going to go. I have to make sure that I am going with Hisuian Gudra now, because he knows that the more prizes Matthias takes, the easier it is to gust around. And, you know, how many times have we seen Hisuian Gudra decks that are basically just Hisuian Gudra and maybe one bench Pokemon? We've got a full bench from Laurence here. It's not what you really want to do. And part of the reason is, it's no good having this giant Pokemon that can't be taken out if your opponent can just ignore it and go after your bench.
Yeah, it's also one of those things that Matthias might want to start checking with Laurence. How many scoop-up nets has he played? One of the sort of key things that he could try and do also is start pinging those two Comfades, because there's only 2 attacks away from really being knocked out, as he does draw and get from the activated gift energy as well. So hand up to 7, draw a card for 8. So a lot to work with here from Matthias' side. Obviously does need another Regidrago down, has to research away a number of Regis, which isn't ideal, but of course hopefully still has access to 2 ordinary rods. But, you know, for him to stay in the game, it's an evil necessity.
But no gusting went there, which is crucial. That's what I was really looking for. But no gusting ended up hitting the discard. That's a big deal for me. So he's just trying to get rolling. It looks like he is going after the Regieleki. So I believe that is the one that can hit the bench. So yeah, it is. And here's the interesting question. Do you go after a Comfey? Because it is 40 damage to 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Or do you hit the Hisuian Gudra, and then if Laurence doesn't evolve it, you can take that out? I think you probably have to go Comfey, but there is at least an option for the Gudra here.
Yeah, I think you've got to, as you've kind of mentioned across this weekend so far, you've got to start asking questions to Laurence, like, do you have the way of stopping what I'm trying to do here? So I'm going to start maybe trying to ping some of your bench Pokemon, whether you have to force Laurence into an awkward Moisture Star to protect himself in some way, shape or form, or maybe it's the 2 Comfeys and start stopping the scoop-up nets that are available to him from that respect. It's asking those questions there, and Laurence has to find a way to find those answers.
Yeah, it is an awkward situation for sure. We do see the Regieleki getting ready to attack here. And here we are going to see the decision. And this is kind of big. Which route is he going down? You imagine it's the 2 Comfey here, and it is the 2 Comfey. Because, again, as enticing as going after the Gudra is, if your opponent evolves, you've wasted that 40 drop potentially. So this is what Matthias needs. Now, if this works, this is absolutely phenomenal from Matthias, because next turn, it doesn't matter what he hits into in the active, he'll KO the Comfey. If he can gust up the Luminion, he will actually take 4 prizes and win next turn, which I love seeing plays like that.
Yeah, I mean, he will have a number of puzzle pieces to try and find as well, because he had to discard a number of those Regis, and I think I might have seen one of those Terra Spark Regielekis go down into the discard as well. But of course, there's plenty of cards like those ordinary rods to try and help bring them all back. But let's see how Laurence is able to play this out. He does get the energy attachments onto the bench, Hisuian Gudra V-Star now.
And he's only
does have his board. Yeah, sorry.
No, not at all, not at all. He's only taken 1 prize. And that is important to me, because Matthias is all of a sudden, I've taken a couple of prizes, but I've got a game plan. There is a Luminion I can go after. I have got both your Comfeys halfway to being KO'd. It is not like game 1, where Laurence was starting to KO every turn and Matthias really wasn't rolling. This is Matthias having a bunch of options, being ahead by 2 prizes, and now Laurence is going. Now, this is big. And I'll be honest with you, with everything else going on, I have not been counting stadiums in the discard for Matthias, which I had been, frankly. Too much other things going on. But now, and this is what we saw in game 2, he's playing the full 4 path to the peak. The question is, how many does he have access to?
I think I've already said there's definitely 2 in the discard, just to help you there, Ross.
Okay.
So it's just, yeah, as you mentioned, down to now finding a way to potentially get back into this game, because Laurence has Rolling Iron going and the Temple of Sinnoh and another
he's got to drop the boss. Dropping the boss is awkward. There is still a Serena in deck, because if he's going down this route, he kind of wants to go after that Luminion. That is the optimal play here. He's got a Serena prize and a boss in the discard. I'm fairly sure the other Serena has not hit the discard. So now the question is, essentially, what he needs is Regieleki and a pivot option. Now, he probably needs to recover it, which he's doing now. But if he's got a ball search and a pivot, he KOs a 2 Comfey, and then it's just a question of, can he find that Serena to finish out the game? presumably with another Reggie Lecky, which is going to be awkward.
I think he's just chosen. There were all 3 Reggie Leckies in his discard, so he's just gone for the Reggie Drago. So I wonder if that means he's not going to be able to pivot out of that Reggie Drago. You know, typically it's unlikely. He has to find that scoop up net if possible. But if he has to leave it inactive, maybe that's why he's chosen to put the Reggie Drago back into the deck, as we do see the Ultra Ball for that Reggie Lecky now, threatening those 2 Conveys onto the bench. It's just, what can Matthias do right now with a choice belt attached? It means scoop up net is probably not something he's got in hand right now, at least, and may just have to attack into the Hisuian Guja V-Star. Let's just see.
I think you've nailed it here, because you're right. You recover the Reggie Drago because you think the Reggie Drago is about to be KO'd. Yeah. You're going to need one for next turn. You put the choice belt on the active, which means you're not scoop up netting, because scoop up net would then get rid of the belt. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think we are attacking with Reggie Drago. And this is the puzzle. Yeah,
so this is the Ancient Wisdom. Still has Temple of Sinnoh in play right now. So does he have Path in hand?
That is the other thing we needed to get to in a second.
Oh, Reggie Drago. Well, did he just draw one? I think he just drew a Path to the Peak. I'm tempted to want to know what's in his hand. Oh, there's a scoop
I always
want
to know what's in his hand. So there we see the Reggie. Oh, I kind of like this, because now you can accelerate more energy. And this is a really cool play, because this basically means I can get the energy for my attack next turn. And then if I don't have all 6 Reggies next turn, it's not the end of the world. My attack's already on board.
So he can actually retreat now, but he still needs that Path. Does he have it in hand to take 2 prizes this turn? He's just had to pass his turn, it looks like.
Oh,
He's missed the Path.
Oh, that is devastating for Matthias. And last game, Matthias wasn't really in it, and the Temple of Sinnoh was really just kind of like the last straw. But here, Matthias was not just in the game. He was on the front foot. He was having a great time. Wait.
Yeah. Into the boss.
I was like, wait, you passed your turn. You can't put it active now. But of course, it is the boss, and Laurent's here doing exactly what needs to be done. You want to go after the Reggie Lecky. That is what's good. You just saw your opponent recover it with an ordinary rod. So now you're forcing your opponent to do that again. And the combination of Temple of Sinnoh and gusting up that Reggie Lecky may well end up being the real pivotal moment in this game, because we've only got less than a minute remaining.
Yeah, really big turn, really big couple of swing turns in matter of fact, because Matthias was kind of setting up and prepping those Conveys for a double KO, and then just eyeing up that Aluminium V for some easy target options there. But now Laurent's taking out his final Reggie Lecky once again, all 3, remember, in the discard, if I'm not mistaken. Just now has to play, looks like a Marnie with a Reggie Gigas in hand as well. So he needs to find an ordinary rod to keep himself in the game. Could still do it. Remember, even with time gone, there's still 3 turns remaining, depending on when it actually gets called and whose turn it sort of lands on. But technically still very possible.
If time gets called this turn, and it really looks like time's being called this turn. Oh, there is the path to the peak. Matthias, okay, so now we assume time's being called right now. Matthias is turn 0. Matthias has to get a 2-prize KO this turn, either on the Luminion, which you could, oh no, Matthias extends a hand, doesn't have it, and Laurent Van Breck does take the victory, 2 games to 0.
Yeah, pretty convincing win in all honesty. Once Laurent's just kind of got his Hisuian Guja V-Stars and rolling iron back-to-back attacks off, it just causes just too much for Reggie's to be able to continuously chain the right attacks to be able to take the win. We saw the game plan from Matthias using sort of Reggie Lecky to Terra Spark and use the sniping damage for the Conveys and just ask those questions. Yeah. But when you're having to constantly research all those Reggie Leckys away, those ordinary rods not coming into the game when it needs to, and of course Temple of Sinnoh really coming to the fore there, Laurent's just was able to just roll with it.
There was that, so he did that. There was that one turn with Temple of Sinnoh. That was it. That was the game. Because if we saw the Reggie Lecky attack, it takes out the 2 Comfey, at which point we've got Reggie Lecky, which can get a 1-hit KO on the Minion, or Reggie Drago, which had a choice belt, which could get a 1-hit KO on a Luminion, which meant it was Serena for game. That was the turn. Temple of Sinnoh stopping Reggie Lecky attacking that turn, that was what lost the game, because then the Reggie Lecky gets KO'd, and then that forces, you know, not only Matthias has to he basically has to start recovering stuff.
Yeah.
He had everything he needed. He wouldn't have to recover any more Reggies. There was no setup. It would have just been, I need Serena next turn to win the game. But then all of a sudden, the Reggie Lecky gets KO'd. Now you need to try and get a new Reggie Lecky to KO to come, and it's too much. And that was the point at which Matthias lost the game. Temple of Sinnoh, MVP in that, and Laurent played that beautifully. That first game was quite straightforward. Second game got hairy, but nice and calm, nice and cool. Hisui and Gudra rocked along, and that was just a very well-played game.
Yeah, very well representative of the Lost Box or Lost Gudra list.
Yeah.
And as we've mentioned, there are a number of them, you know, dancing around in day 2 currently out of our 75 players. Later, hopefully, we'll get a chance to show you the meta breakdown as well, which would be fantastic to see. Yeah. And we can see just how many percentages there are of the Lost Gudra and also Reggie's, because I know there's a few batting around.
There are a few. I'm getting the impression, and I don't know, incidentally, but I'm getting the impression that Hisui and Gudra is not necessarily huge in terms of representation. I think there are a few, you know, really dedicated, good players who have basically made that decision of, you know what, this is the play for this tournament. It seems to be working.
Yeah, we know how the meta sort of shifts, and there's lots of sort of cycles of different formats, and now we're seeing Gudra kind of come to the fore because Lost Box has generally always been here and around. Those single prize attackers are so efficient at being able to do what it does. Of course, we know Lugia sort of dominates the field typically as it stands right now, but Gudra just, as we mentioned, being able to take potentially a 50-50, but then having such a good matchup into Lost Box, which is typically the second best, or not second best, second highest represented deck at a lot of these tournaments, and then just kind of feasting on some of those, really.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. I mean, if there was a deck you could bring that had like a 70% matchup against everything, everybody would be playing it. Really, the best you can hope for, in a format like this, the best you can hope for is, I have got a few really good matchups and a bunch of 50-50s, and I think I am good enough as a player to get around it.
Yeah.
The good news is, we did have somebody who was good enough, and we have got a winner's interview, so, you know, stop listening to us. Let's go listen to an actual winner.